Okay. And it's just doing that. Good. Perfect. All right, we're good to go, Jeff.
Okay, I'd like to call to order the special meeting of the Easton Board of Education, Friday, May the 1st at 5 p.m. What I'll do is just do a roll call for the Easton Board of Education members. If you just yell hi or wave or do something, let me know that you're here. Jenny Cheetah. Don't see Jenny yet. Gretchen Goldstein.
Here.
Randy Hicks.
Yeah.
Okay, Katie Reed.
Present.
And John Stinson.
Hello.
Okay. Next on the agenda is discussion and possible action, and it's to approve the Easton Board of Education's contract negotiating committee to reach out to union leadership for all bargaining units to discuss possible changes in contracts for next year. Now, every committee, as you know, needs a committee charge. The negotiating committee has been alive and well for decades. But in running around trying to get a copy of the charge with very few people in central office, I wasn't able to get it. And so in the interest of making sure that we follow the proper protocols, put together a new charge, which I sent to everyone, which I think John will now put up on the screen for us so that the public can see it. And
this is also posted, Jeff, to along where the meeting agenda was posted.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Very good. Now, I'll just take a minute to read it because I think it's important that board members and the public understand what the scope of this is. And in fact, the scope is quite narrow. But again, the purpose of this charge, the Easton Board of Education Negotiating Committee is authorized to represent the Board of Education, will be known just as the board, for all contract negotiations with bargaining units and or associations working under the agreements with the board. In accordance with the Easton Bylaw 9132, Committee and Advisory Committees, the Easton Board of Education Negotiating Committee will be considered an ad hoc committee authorized only to address issues related to distant learning during the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic at the time of its formation. This committee will make recommendations for board actions. It may not act for the board except in instances where authority to act has been specifically delegated to the committee by the board. The structure: the negotiating committee will comprise of the chairman of the Easton Board of Education and 2 other board members appointed by the chair. In addition, the superintendent, director of finance and operations, human resource manager will be non-voting members. The committee may seek legal representation as well as invite the Board of Finance to appoint a non-voting representative if the committee deems such representation is necessary. And finally, the process: the negotiating committee will meet as needed to address issues relative to collective bargaining in accordance with the Connecticut General Statutes. The committee will report to the full board as needed. Upon completion of this assignment, the committee will be considered dissolved when its final report has been presented to the Board of Education. So entertain a motion to accept the committee charge as written and presented.
So moved.
And who was that?
Randy.
Randy.
Okay, Randy. And then did I have a second?
Seconded.
Okay, thank you, John. Any discussion explanation?
So I have a question about and apologies for not sending this earlier. I don't know how I missed this part. So can you help me understand the part ad hoc committee authorized only to address issues related to distance learning during the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic at the time of its formation? It makes it sound like what we're saying is this is only to deal with distance learning questions, but is that the case?
Well, we're asking the board to allow the negotiating committee to go back to each of the bargaining units and the reason behind that is that the educational offering that we're now doing is tied to distant learning because of the COVID-19 pandemic. It is not for any other reason outside of that event.
I see. I understand that now. Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I have a question. I don't understand why the general negotiating committee charge needs to be changed at all. I thought the purpose of this meeting was just to decide whether or not we were going to give that committee sort of not like permission or support them going to enter into a conversation with the union.
The reason for that, Jenny, is that upon trying to go back and maybe you weren't on when I mentioned this, but
Sorry.
No, that's all right. I had asked central office for a copy of the charge, and again, there's only one or two people in the office, and everyone's running as fast as they can. And they came back to me and said, Jeff, we can't find it right now. So rather than go into these discussions without a charge to kind of hang our hat on, I thought it was an opportunity to change the charge and make it far more so that it deals just with this issue, and by making it an ad hoc committee rather than one that is a standing committee, which is what the normal negotiating committee is. The ad hoc will do the work that needs to be done as it relates to the motion and possible action. And then once that is completed, they will report to the board and then dissolve.
Okay, understood. Except that isn't was not my understanding of the purpose of this committee. You want to go to the unions and ask them to consider making changes to the contract for next year for financial reasons.
Correct.
It's nothing to do with distance learning. I guess I don't understand why this negotiating ad hoc committee would be authorized to address issues related to distance learning during the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what I'm saying? Like it really has nothing to do with COVID-19, except that we're talking about financial fallout at the town level from the pandemic, but that's not really the charge of this committee. I think I don't think we're quite on the right track with this.
And Jeff, that was my confusion as well. And I think the way that I'm seeing it is, in part, what we're saying is, accept a sort of 1 year of altered, not sort of going for a new sort of contract and deal and sort of all that stuff. Let us talk to you about that possibility, because we're probably going to be in distance learning. Is that why that's in there, that part about distance learning? Am I reading that right?
Yes. The reason why, and again, I can assure you, I didn't write this on the back of a napkin in the bottom of the ninth inning. But the distant learning and the fact that we're in this pandemic we want to make it clear to the unions that is the reason why we're coming to sit down and talk with them, that the that all of this has caused certainly financial concerns, but it is not because in any way, shape, manner, or form we are disappointed with the unions or their membership or the work that they've done or anything else. So we're trying to make it so it doesn't come across in any way offensive.
Jeff, I still don't think this has anything to do with distance learning, because unlikely, but if we go back into the physical plant on May 21st, this is still a relevant, from our offline conversations, this is still a relevant concern. I really think the distance learning part of it needs to be pulled out of it, because it really has more to do with town financials.
It's just
Given the
changes
given
in
the current-
circumstances due to the COVID-19 pandemic. That's the issue is. I think the distance learning part is the part that's not put in there properly. Like, we're having this discussion because we're in a pandemic.
So Jeff, would you be open to me just putting a comment here and saying, so instead of related to distance learning during the ongoing budget, we just say related to issues arising?
I would just say related to learning during the pandemic. Like it's.
Well, I think let me see if this works, and it's kind of along the lines of what I think John was suggesting. It's authorized to address issues related.
Oh, right.
Take out the words to distant learning.
Yeah.
And leaving it with during the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic and the time of its formation. So if you took out
related to
that's all.
took out to distant learning, if you took that out, would that have people feel more comfortable?
Yeah, issues related to the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic.
Yeah.
And the ongoing ongoing pandemic, and then why don't we cut out at the time of its formation, because I'm not sure that relates to COVID-19. I think that more relates to distant learning.
Yep. Okay.
Jeff, the only reason I brought it up is because I don't want it to be confused saying that it's distance learning that's causing a change in financial situation. Like somehow it's distance learning that is causing the financial issues.
Okay. Well, again, I'm not here to to argue a point. I'll just say that this is what the folks that I talked to, Tom and others, as to wording that they would suggest. But I'm not against what you're saying, and if you're more comfortable with ad hoc authorized to address issues related to the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic, I think we're good.
Or it could say issues related to learning during the ongoing. I mean, I don't know if you need to get that. I don't know.
Well, but specifically, this is not a committee to talk about distance learning. It's really just negotiations, with the unions, right?
Correct.
Correct.
Although
that actually but that could include distance learning things, couldn't it? If they say we don't want to do this or we do want to do that as a part of the conversation, right?
Right. I mean, it could be.
We no longer want to record. We don't want to have any recordings. Then that becomes a part, right? Like, yeah. Okay. Okay.
I mean, I think that's why it was put in. Oh, I'm sorry, Katie. I didn't mean to interrupt.
Oh, no. I was just agreeing with John, but saying that it doesn't need to be put in black and white on this. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's sufficiently vague. That it could be, that it has a lot of ways that it could go.
Yeah. Jenny, does this seem reasonable?
I just wanted to make sure that the distance learning thing was pulled out of it, because we could be having this conversation even if school was open. If if COVID-19, the issue really is finances,
Mhm.
not
Okay.
not the method of instruction.
Okay.
Okay, then can we amend the motion to, well, I guess, thanks to John, he's already made the changes on here. So can we, can I entertain, I'm happy to entertain a motion to accept the committee charge, negotiation committee revised 5/1/2020 as presented.
Motion from Gretchen.
Second.
Okay, so that was first Gretchen and second Katie? Okay, very good. Any further discussion? Okay, all in favor say aye.
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 Yep. And Randy is raising his hand in the chat.
Thank you, Randy. Thanks for sharing your hand. Okay, so that's where, here, let me make a, hold on just a second. I want to, distant learning, cross that out. Okay. All right, very good. Next is the discussion and possible action, which is the approval of the Easton Board of Education Contract Negotiating Committee to reach out to union leadership for all bargaining units to discuss possible changes in contracts for next year. Entertain a motion to accept this as presented. Did I suddenly lose people?
No, so moved.
Okay, is there a second?
Sure, second.
Gretchen raised her hand first.
Okay. Discussion.
So I'm curious about the sort of members who will do that, because I think I know who that will be. I mean, I think I would be a part of it because I think it's a part of, if I'm preparing to take over the board chairmanship in June, it probably makes sense.
Yep, I agree.
I think there's a predisposition to having Randy included as well, and I think probably you, Jeff. And the concern that I have is it's all of us guys and no women, and I don't think that's necessarily a representative sampling. So I'm a little bit concerned about that. Other than that, I don't have any other concerns.
Okay. Well, I'm sorry. Other thoughts?
It's okay to go ahead.
Sure. Go ahead, Jenny.
John, absolutely appreciate you mentioning that. I'm not concerned about that right now. I think the collective experience of all of you is appropriate. I've expressed interest in being on the negotiating. I wanted to be on the administrative contract negotiating committee in the past. I'd like to be included in the fall if possible. So just kind of throw my hat in the ring now for consideration in the future. But I think we're okay.
I agree with
right now.
that statement.
Okay. Katie, any thoughts or any concerns?
No.
Okay. All right. Well, the way that all the committees work is that the chair is the person that picks the folks for the committee. I concur with John that my choices would be John and Randy. Randy has been on all the negotiating. Well, let's see, he's been on two teachers, or Randy, two teachers or one teachers?
Two teachers.
Yeah, so he's been on two teachers and the administrators, as well as he was on for the paras, although most of that took place right after school, so he wasn't able to make it. But he has a lot of experience in it, and if in John's position, certainly as the probable, hopefully, from my perspective, but probable chair, needs to be involved in all these things going forward, because he's going to get the opportunity to to live with those and be able to answer questions, et cetera. So it makes sense that he should be there. So I'm fine with that. Is there any other discussion about the motion before you?
Is this the time for comments, or do you want to have the vote and then comments after?
Well, we can have comments now. There's a place for board member comment after this, after the public. If that's more, if you're more comfortable with that, it's your choice.
Well, I think it's relevant to the discussion. This isn't a male-female thing, but I'm not going to stand in the way. I was probably outvoted on going forward with asking this question of the unions right now. But I'm extremely uncomfortable with the timing of approaching this subject with our teachers and administrators, given what they've been going through for us as far as distance learning goes, the communications that we are receiving from central office, concern for faculty, concern for central office. And I feel like this is the tip of the iceberg. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because I feel like, teachers is first. And if we're talking to the teachers, then people are going to be interested in us talking to central office and maybe, perhaps opening more than just this contract for this conversation. I understand the optics from the side of, leave no stone unturned from the standpoint of the Board of Finance and the town. But I think as far as our relationship with the faculty and the administration, that this is potentially a really insulting move just because of the timing, especially. On the flip side, I'm interested to hear, I know Randy had mentioned offline just that there may be a potential benefit to the teachers down the road if we have this conversation now because of the timing. So I would certainly like to learn more from those of you with experience in this as to how this could end up being a positive. Because if I was a teacher right now and somebody asked me to take a pay cut, I don't know that I would take kindly to it.
Well, I don't know that we're going to go in recommending a pay cut, but
well, just the general gist that we're saying, some alteration to your expected compensation for next year.
Right. There's two sides of it, and I can totally appreciate that side of it, because it does feel like we're, kicking somebody when they're going sort of above and beyond based on what we know is this current circumstances. The flip side of that is everything that's going on around us, and whether it's Board of Finance or the town selectmen or anybody else that's looking at finances from Hartford down to Easton. And as you said, Jenny, you don't leave any stone unturned. Ask the question. It's not meant to be derogatory or condescending or insulting to anybody. It's just, we're all in this together. And that should be the mindset. And then the flip side of it is, one of the contract negotiations that occurred 12 years ago was during the Great Recession, right? 2008, 2009, or somewhere in that time frame, the summer of one of those 2 years. And I'm sure that the economics that came out of that were worse than the economics that they got 3 years later, as far as step increases and everything else.
That's true.
So the perspective, again, glasses half full, glasses half empty. You can have the perspective today that if you buy another year, albeit flat, the negotiation climate a year from now, hopefully, or a year from August, September, might work to their advantage. And it may not, but that's the only sort of carrot in all this, other than it's just, we're in this together. We have to make we have expectations as to what the Board of Finance is going to do for us or not do for us in a week or two. And, you know, this might save a teacher or two, or allow us to add back the librarian, or, you know, I think that the dollar amounts, Jeff, unless I'm mistaken, are in the vicinity of $300,000.
Right. That's if everyone across the board agreed to extend the current year contract to next year.
There's a lot of things at play, and you all have been recipients of, you know, some of my emails and Jeff's emails about, you know, what's going on over here and what's going on over there, and what's the mood at, you know, Board of Finance. And you know, it's a mess. And then, you know, you get the unemployment numbers and you get further depressed. You know, I think we just all have to look at it from the biggest picture that we can. And some of these teachers are our town residents. They understand. And even if they're in a town next door, they understand. So they see the news, they see what's going on. I get your point, Jenny, and, you know, sort of this is, you know, it's not opportune timing. On the other hand, it sort of feels like it's not a totally inappropriate ask given what's going on around us. And frankly, and I'm not an economist, but things are going to get a lot worse economically speaking for individuals, the state, the country. I mean, we're not through this, even though certain states are opening up and whatever. The economics of this, you know, crisis is going to get a lot worse before it gets better. So anyways, that's, you know, I don't know. I don't know how I feel about this. I'm not excited about it on the one hand, because they are our teachers and they're doing a good job. The administrators are doing, everybody's doing, you know, a terrific job. But this, again, there may be some silver lining or some helpful side of this for them in the down the road, or in the near term with who we have to cut and or who we can keep.
Well, if I could just thank you, Randy. I mean, for myself and for anybody who's listening, I think it was important to have that, to kind of air that conversation. You know, and we trust you, but if I could just ask the three of you that are going to go forward with these conversations to please keep that in the back of your mind during these discussions. I reached out to a few former colleagues, and kind of general consensus was, yeah, if my district did this to us right now, it would be considered a huge slap in the face. So any way that we can give them real data, real information that shows why it's necessary to have this conversation, and like you said, to highlight maybe the potential benefits, would be really appreciated.
Yeah. Jeff, do you know, is this going on in Reading?
Reading had their Board of Finance, Board of Ed meeting last night. I've got two thoughts. First is they had their meeting last night. They cut the Reading budget, not quite in half, but close. They were originally asking, I think, for 3.25, and they're someplace under 2, lightly under 2, I think. So it was cut in half.
I'm sorry, Jeff, what was cut in half?
The Reading budget for their school year for next year.
Their increase was cut in half, right?
Right. Yeah, I'm sorry. No, yeah, their whole budget was cut in half. Oh my God. No, yeah. They had originally asked for an increase of 3.25, and they're someplace south of 2. For your general information, I asked Chris Parkin and I kind of huddled up on this, and we now have access to every board chair in the state, and we asked Chris did the honors to send the email out to the 169 board chairs, or 167 with us being 68 and 69 board chairs, asking them if any of them were having these same conversations with their unions. And the response was resounding, which was the answer was no. The answer was no across the board. So this is not a groundswell as far as the rest of the country, as the rest of the state is, in terms of those the boards of education thinking that there is some financial relief by opening up contracts again. But I think from our point of view, and just understanding that to have conversations with our contract partners during this very difficult time, there's not anything inherently wrong with that. And also for everyone's understanding, if the bargaining units say thanks but no thanks, we're not interested, well, that's their right, and that's perfectly fine. But we want to be able to do and say that we've looked at every possibility, and I think to Randy's point, looking back at the teacher's contract in particular in the year 2008, I believe I think their increase in the first year of that right after the drop was somewhere between 0.5%, nearly a freeze, and that was done with the understanding that when times got better, then the contract would get better, and everyone walked away from that. Now this was pre me being on the board, but in sitting and talking with Dan Underberger about that, who was on that committee at that time, that was the story that he shared. And when you look at how the contracts came out later on, the boards did work to try to make up for the difference for that year. So I think we would go into those discussions, should we have them, with that same kind of attitude. And if our partners are interested in having those talks, that'll be fine. And I have a couple of ideas just off the top in terms of things that we could talk about. But again, it's really going to be up to them. We're equal partners in this, and if they say yes, that's great. If they say no, then that's going to be great too, because we're not going to let these discussions get in the way of the positive relationship that we have with our with all the folks that work for Easton Public Schools.
Jeff, I'm not sure. I think what Randy was asking is Reading doing this also? Like, are they also going to be asking their unions to have this conversation? Like you had said to me that in your last department chair meet, but that I thought that was the reason for doing this, was that the board chairs met and you decided that this was a course of action that you wanted to take. So I was under the impression that Easton, Reading, and Region 9 were all doing this.
No. Reading. I mean, Jenny, Reading is sitting on receiving from back from, in essence, us, but it's the apportionment change where Reading is going to get in essence a credit of $693,000 because we went from 42% of the Barlow population up to 45%. So in spite of the fact that they have those kind of dollars coming back, they still took the budget that Reading Board of Education asked of them and still cut it nearly, that increase nearly in half. So I think it's, again, it speaks to the pain that everyone's going through it. I don't think there's anybody here who can look at their at their 401ks and be excited about the numbers they see today as they were 2 months ago. But it's, you know, it's just the reality that we have. And but to answer your question, no, Reading is not doing this, and neither is Region 9. It's just us.
Isn't there also, and apologies for not having it off the top of my head, but something like the unemployment rate went up to 7% in Reading, and here in Easton it's at 11%. So it's
right. It's jumped.
Alarming increase compared.
Yeah, the unemployment pre-COVID in Easton was 3%, and as of the end of April, it had jumped to 11%.
Yeah. Okay.
We have a quite smaller population compared to Reading too, don't we? So that number's even worse.
Yeah, slightly smaller. Yeah. Yeah. Let's
so
on the good news.
Yes. Right.
So if they took essentially the elementary middle school budgets in Reading down in the $200,000 range, I mean, their overall education allocation or budget line item is less than it was this year. It'll be less next year. If they're getting 690 from the high school and the elementary and middle school is going up by a couple $100,000. I mean, they're to the good on healthcare to the tune of $400,000 or $500,000, whereas we're $1.6 million.
Well, no, Reading is having a very tough year in terms of health insurance. Region 9 is having a wonderful year, but Reading is having a tough year. They went into the year with a $450,000 reserve balance, and they're hoping to finish the year with $1.50.
No, yeah, I remember that. What I'm saying is, if you look at if Reading's elementary middle school budget is 18 million, it's going to go up by 200,000 next year. Right. Their high school budget, was 14 million. It's going to be 13.4 next year. When they aggregate those two, the combination will be less than they spent this year.
Correct.
Whereas Easton, we're right now $1.6 million, $1.5 million and change, whatever, up from last year, which already assumes $2 million from the unencumbered whatever fund, and because of Region 9, the switch in the population, and because of our requested 700,000 or so.
Yeah, the difficult place that we're in is that the Easton budget is 707,000. We're also getting in essence a bill from Barlow of another 693,000. You throw in a couple of $100,000 for their increase year over year. They're asking for a 0.9. That's a 0.9 on $24 million. We're going to get 45% of that, and so you end up with what you end up with.
Yeah.
Why do they need to have a percent increase at all, given the funds that they're sitting on? Or is that that's way beyond the scope of this conversation?
Well, I'm afraid I could wax poetic about that, Jenny, for the next hour, and probably be standing up shouting by the end of it. So I think it's better to say that we're trying to do what we can do in our town with our situation.
Agree.
Any other?
Yeah, listen, I think it has to be framed, and it will be framed in such a way as, we'll have to come up with some sort of neat analogy or whatever, but it has to be framed that say, hey, listen, we get it. We know this request is interesting. But at the end of the day, again, maybe the glass is half full, maybe it's half empty. Get the negotiations of a 3-year contract out of this summer, and maybe that's worth it to you to go zero next year. Because that's the right way to look at it. If I'm sitting in their shoes, if I'm the attorney there, I make that comment to the members and say, it's not crazy. You may not like it. It may not sound great, but it's not crazy.
Mhm.
Anyways, so.
Yeah, better to have the conversation in better times.
That's right. I mean, we are scheduled to start teacher negotiations. Again, we're scheduled. Whether these will happen or how it'll happen, I'm not sure. But we're scheduled to start in August, and it'll be for the next 3-year contract, which will start in 21-22, and obviously it's going to be a very tough environment to have contract discussions when we're in the middle of the soup that we're now currently in. So I think Jenny, that's what Randy was saying, is that they might, and again, I'm not suggesting that they will, but they might look at it and go, you know what, I'd rather get this year's increase next year and then start my negotiating from there, as opposed to saying, no, I'll take what I signed up for, knowing that the negotiation cycle, teachers go first, then administrators, then paras, then custodians. But again, that's the worst thing anybody's ever said to me when I've asked is no. I said no thanks. Sometimes it's a little more animated, but for the most part, it's no thank you, and I'll say that's fine. We won't shake, but we'll give each other a fake hug, and we'll head on down the street. The one thing that I want to make sure that we do with all the unions is this is not punitive. This is not in any way, shape, manner, or form any kind of a punishment. Pandemic's not your fault. It darn sure isn't ours, but we're in this soup together, and we're looking for all ways that we can to try to find our way out.
Hey, Jeff, one other non-positive sort of comment is, have the non-renewals, or whatever Tom referred to them as a week or so ago, have they gone out? Did they go out May 1st or?
Normally they would. The governor gave us an extension. I think that'll be part of our meeting on May 12th. I haven't gone over what the agenda is going to be yet as far as Tom is concerned, but I have that out there to him that should we do the non-renewals, I know we're later than usual, but I know we have more time, and I'll let him make that decision.
Yeah, okay.
We have a motion, right?
Yes, sir.
I think, yep. I think that was discussion.
I'll leave that to the.
That was discussion. I'm done.
Okay. Anyone else? All right. We have a motion. We've had a first and a second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay.
Aye.
I think it passes 6-0. Okay. Well, thank you for all this. I know that coming out on a Friday night is not exactly something most people want to do, but I do appreciate your time in getting this done. We can now switch to public comment. So, John, I'll let you be the band leader, and
sure. So, if you can raise your hand, or if you want to turn on your video and wave at me that way, you can, or you can show your participant list and raise your hand using the controls inside of right at the bottom of the participant list. You should be able to raise your hand there. Any member of the public who would like to say something. I'm not seeing anything. Anybody else seeing anything? No, I don't see anything.
Not on my board.
I'm gonna allow participants to unmute themselves right now. So if people are having trouble, you can unmute yourself right now if you're so inclined. Anybody? I think that's a no, Jeff.
Okay. Do we have any board member comment?
Just thank you for the discussion. And thank you, Jeff, also for looking into policy regarding this vote and having us come together to discuss it. I think it was an important conversation to air for anybody that might hear that we were doing this down the road and maybe have some feelings about this, that they could come back to the minutes about this. So thank you.
Okay.
I'd like to thank Jenny for really digging in and getting to the bottom of it. Really, so thanks for that, Jenny.
Appreciate it.
Jenny. If I could just say something, Jenny, Randy, and Jeff, thank you all for your sort of contributions there. I really appreciate the discussion, and I agree wholeheartedly with Jenny, like giving everybody the opportunity to see this in the daylight. Like this is, we're not trying to hide anything. We're not trying to get one over on anybody. We're in this together, and I'm glad we have the ability to jump on and, in 45 minutes or so, have a really meaty conversation, have it available to the public, have the opportunity for people to comment, and then go back to our socially distanced lives.
Okay. Gretchen, anything? Randy? Okay.
No, let's see. Region 9 has another meeting. They approve their reapprove or whatever on Monday. Is that right? Their budget?
They have a meeting scheduled for Monday the 4th and also May 19th. So between that day and the 19th, it seems like they've had the discussion and approved this thing a couple of times, but they're still having conversations. So until they stop talking about it, I guess we'll continue to wait and see how much. Hopefully, I've asked for them to get back to me with if you can't give me an actual number in terms of dollars that would be returning, can you give me a range so I can share that with our Board of Finance? The Board of Finance wants to start meeting with us. May 11th is a date that it hasn't been confirmed, but it's a date that that they're interested in. That's the day before, obviously, our meeting on the 12th. Then they want to have a second meeting after the 12th to try to finalize this. So there'll be a lot of things coming our way here in a very short period of time.
And is there? I imagine the state's given extensions, but is there a drop dead date sort of by the town? Says okay, we're done with the town budget.
I think what the town would like to do is have a referendum vote on June the 9th. That's what they'd like to do. Whether we can do that or not remains to be seen. Most people seem to think that the governor is going to come out with a declaration sometime next week about the rest of the school year. And there was a lot of debate up in Hartford yesterday concerning whether or not you could have a referendum vote. Apparently, there's some miscommunication, but the clarity that's been brought now is that towns can have a referendum vote should they choose to. They've got to check a lot of boxes with health departments to make sure that they follow proper process and procedure, but that is a possibility. If we don't do that, then the Board of Finance has the power to make those final decisions in terms of determining what the town budget's going to be and what our piece of that is.
Okay. Yeah.
So it's a lot of hurry up and wait. It's frustrating, but it's just kind of the world we live in right now.
And essentially, the gavel comes down on the 30th, one way or another, June 30th.
Well, again, it actually doesn't have to. There is a mechanism for moving the budget, the actual decision-making back into later in the summer. That means that the town would send bills based upon last year's budget. We would continue forward with last year's budget until an actual budget is passed. But it's clear to me that what the town's interest is they'd like the tax bills that go out on the 1st of July to reflect what the budget's going to be for the year. And so that's, if there's a way they can get that done, that's the road they'd like to take.
Yeah.
So again, June 9th, a referendum vote. If it doesn't happen because of powers that are beyond us, then the Board of Finance will have a mechanism to decide the town budget as a whole, and then the individual pieces, of which we are the largest chunk, to be sure.
Okay.
All right. Well, if there isn't anything else, I'm happy to entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Everybody wants to say, what's the matter?
I think Randy got it.
Okay.
Trying to be very Zoom polite.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, yeah. This has been great. I can't wait till we get a chance to do it again. Okay.
Randy, John?
So I had a first, I had a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
It's 5:52. Thank you very much, and have a fun-filled week.
Oh, I just want to thank Liz for being here to record minutes with us tonight. Really appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Okay, very good.
Thank you.
Thanks again, guys.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
everybody. Thank you.
John, thank you for
Yep,
everything.
no problem. No
Okay.
problem.